Hello and welcome to Beyond the Test Strasz Talks. I'm your host, Rory McCorkle, and I'm pleased to have with me today Desmond Stewart. Desmond is an account development manager at Lineup, and we're going to be talking all things SMEs today. So good old subject matter experts and leveraging Des's experience in the space. Desmond, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate you having me.
Well, we're excited to have the conversation. And as always, we start off with actually one of the things that I think is one of the most fascinating, how we all ended up here. So I'd love to hear from you. You know, how did you end up in credentialing? What was your career journey in getting to your role in Lineup?
Sure. Thank you. I mean, it's probably going to be one of the more unconventional ones, but the shortest possible version of it is I went to school to try to work in sports media. That was my initial goal. I said, I want to be on Sports Center. I want to be on Part of the Interruption, something like that. I was playing football, and I wasn't playing football in college. I was on the team in college, but I got hurt a lot, and I ended up leaving. And I went home, and I was kind of bouncing around. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I found my way to Prometric somehow. I worked there for the better part of a decade, worked in several roles, but spent most of my time in the account, customer success world, worked with dozens of different organizations, and really just learned a lot over time, had a lot of really, really strong mentors and teachers across my time there and working with different organizations. And it's one of those spaces where I feel like for most of the people listening, once you get in, it's kind of like, ooh, this is great. I'm probably going to stay here a while. Yeah. So, and then I wound up in Lineup after COVID. I think everybody experienced a lot of, I don't want to say, let's just say a lot of people probably went back to the drawing board around COVID, and that I was included there. Lineup is still a pretty young company, all things considered, and I came over in 2021 when we were way newer than we are now. But it's been really cool to move from being a provider at that level to now really focusing on a very specific aspect of the process. So I like it.
Well, we're definitely glad that you found it. And while this is a very poor stand-in for being on Sports Center, hey, listen, at least we're getting on a recording here, man.
Yeah, I'm buzzing the tower right now.
There you go. Well, so I said as we were beginning to intro today, we're going to focus on all things subject matter experts, which of course is both Lineup's focus as well as a focus for most of the groups in the space, subject matter experts and their areas of expertise in the disciplines we serve makes our world go round, as you know well. But particularly post-COVID, since you've brought that up, many more programs than I think we have historically had, are experiencing subject matter expert fatigue, and having more difficulty recruiting, getting people to stick within programs. Just curious to see from your work with Lineup, what have you seen as the primary drivers for that SME fatigue, and how have those kind of changed over the last 5-7 years?
Sure. I think it's a lot of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, with most organizations, because one of the things that we really focus on is helping organizations determine like the appropriate net to cast when they're trying to find people to serve. And historically, a lot of organizations do not have like a process for recruiting SMEs or vetting them. It's just I know somebody who knows somebody, I got a guy somewhere, or depending on what the incentives are for the SME program, you're turning people away because it's so popular to be a SME, or it's a requirement for, um, relicensure or something like that to participate. So there's a lot of different ways that people get in. And I think that because there's not necessarily a agreed upon process to recruit in every industry, there's a vastly different pool from which you're recruiting. So, if you're in a really specialized medical field, you're in a pretty niche financial service, you might only have 200 or 300 people to pull from. But if you're, a huge nursing organization, or, you have a lot of people in the education space, you might have thousands of SMEs, in the IT space. So I think that across the board, the fatigue comes because everybody's tired, Rory. Like it's, I don't know if the last time, anybody listening paid their bills or went through it, but it's just been rough, and I think that we have to be cognizant of that. And I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point here, but everybody's been reevaluating, that cost benefit analysis for all of their time, right? And I think if you're a credentialing organization and you need SMEs, you have to think about that. You have to look yourself in the mirror as an administrator and say, what are we really offering our people? What do we want them to get out of this? Because we know what we get out of it, but what do they get out of it? And that's probably one of the bigger reconciliations that we've been seeing play out.
No, makes complete sense. And, particularly for some of the fields that that you just mentioned, healthcare, which tends to be labor strapped. And so pulling away for a meeting for a couple of days is a huge commitment. Or in IT certification, where there's been so much turnover and layoffs. I mean, to your point, yeah, the environment is difficult in a macro sense, and that's definitely finding itself into the recruitment pipeline for sure.
Sure.
But you hit something that I think is really critical, and that is increasingly the organizations that we serve are looking to add in subject matter experts to either fill a very niche need, as you just mentioned, or they're looking to broaden or diversify that pipeline. And many times that's out of a drive to get younger professionals involved, underrepresented groups, people who might be, on the growth swing in their career. What are some of the strategies that, you and the groups that work with Lineup have been utilizing to really work to broaden and diversify that subject matter expert base?
Yeah, well, that's really the heart of the challenge. Is how do you get the right people? And that's unfortunately, and selfishly for me, because I want everybody to use Lineup, but I think that very, very, very few organizations have a schema in place or any sort of real approach to deciding what does the ideal SME look like? What do our certificate holders look like? Our whole entire community around our industry, and R is every single one of you, right? But I think the question is, what does diversity look like, or like broadening the pool look like? Because there are some disciplines that are not diverse from particular demographic breakdowns, or there's not a ton of age diversity in like contracting and code inspection, for example. That's an industry that's in tough shape, with the young people not replacing the people who have come before them anywhere close to what we need them to. So you have to probably double and triple and quintuple your efforts to try to get those young people involved. And then you also have to figure out, for the folks who have more experience, what are we doing to encourage them to reach down and grab somebody who, and I don't want to say it, that way, but like, are they grabbing somebody from, like an understudy standpoint, and like you have some mentees that you want to help kind of pass the game along to as it's time for you to go up into the rafters. I think that the question has to start with who is in your pool of contributors. And that's really what we focus on is creating that environment to live with the data being the source of truth for how we make those decisions. And then we can also give that transparency out to the community and say, listen, this is what went into our decision making for how we service the committees. And if there's a big gap in, we're super overrepresented in the West Coast in this, we need to recruit more people from other regions. We need to recruit internationally. It's not just, do we have enough, people of a certain look or a certain whatever, it's background of discipline, background of age, background of experience. There's a ton of different factors that we dive into, in addition to what we just talked about, availability, in the real life, challenges that are there to try to get folks in the room together.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, completely agree. And to your point, a lot of it does go back to overall awareness of the data on credential holders writ large, which certainly a number of groups don't have the kind of depth of data to initiate that type of recruiting. So it does become a recommendation or referral type system, to your point. And then when they do, ensuring that the individuals coming in feeling valued, feeling heard, something I dealt with a lot in my past life in test development and psychometrics is, creating that right environment that those individuals don't feel shut out by, say, the luminaries on the group, which of course becomes a critical dynamic too. And that actually leads me to my next piece, and that is that onboarding process, because to your point around processes, that's something that often organizations don't necessarily have as well. They may have, some tactical training in whatever
Right.
is trying to be accomplished, item writing or job analysis. They may have some distinct training there, but not necessarily something formalized with regard to being a volunteer for the association or the
Right.
corporation. What are some things that you've seen work in terms of that onboarding process that can really help volunteers feel welcomed as well as confident and efficient in the work that they're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great point to highlight because um I don't think that anybody on this call who is supporting test development efforts, like you should feel seen and not attacked right now. Like this is a very consistent area of improvement for the overwhelming majority of organizations in this space. And I say that with the utmost respect to what is happening and what you guys are required to do to get the job done, because a lot of times people in these roles are inheriting processes that have been processes that have been in place for however long, right? And we've always done it this way, or we have to do it this way, and things of that nature. Then you also have your actual requirements, right? Like, what do we have to do to pass audit? What do we have to do to keep our accreditations and all those things? So I think a lot of times program administrators or psychometricians, test developers, whomever's supporting the SMEs, you're always kind of up against it from every angle. And to help get those people to the outcomes that we want, which is what creating valid content that we think represents the direction that we want the practitioners, the practices who practice our whatever our discipline is to exhibit moving forward, right? And I think that when we have that right group of people, and we're doing the work and the recruiting and the vetting stage to figure out as closely as we can, we're getting the right type of person, quote unquote, for the role. How do we make sure that they're set up for success? So how do we communicate with them often? How do we point them and kind of make it impossible for them to miss where the resources are, where they can get help? And then for us as administrators, how do we benchmark our people, ourselves, right? How do we define our own success? what is the response rate that we're looking for, things like that, that we can use tools to help us with. But also, I think it's about having that intentionality in that process where, you can't always account for every by the way, but you can have a plan for, what you at least want to accomplish other than the basic, we need 50 items and we need them yesterday. We get it, but what can we do to support that a little bit less, hopefully, and a little bit more intentionally.
Well, and I think you bring up a great point. Even, an overview so that people fully can understand the organization and where volunteers and subject matter experts fit in the fabric of those cultural expectations, meeting expectations, all of those often get overlooked, I think, in that type of onboarding, but are critical elements to go alongside, let's say, not only the tactical aspect of the process, but even the tactical things around the engagement, whether that's, oh, here's how to submit your expenses, here's, those types of things as well.
Yep.
And I know I was in my past life when working for some associations, I know that was a, consistent theme. Oh, we didn't know X org did all this, and identifying that. So I think that's our great call outs.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned this, or you have alluded to it, I think, and that is, a number of organizations in our space do rely on intrinsic motivation for volunteering, or more, let's say, softer extrinsic motivation, such as career development or adding something to one's CV, what have you.
Yep.
How have you seen organizations think about, other types of incentive and recognition? Obviously financial is one thing, but making it easier for folks to achieve that recognition, whether that be professional, reputational, as part of their effort to sustain SME engagement.
It's another great topic, because central to all of the stuff that I think just about every one of us does in our career is what's in it for me, right? At the end of the day. And I think that, the more that we dive into that and lean in, instead of, like you said, say, well, you should just want to do this for the love of the craft, or let's get real. Everybody's juggling. Everybody is multitasking and just kind of trying to stay afloat in a lot of these scenarios. When it's like, do I sit on this webinar or sit in these virtual meetings after work, after practice, after this, after that? And it's like, yeah, I will, because I believe in the industry, or I believe in my career opportunities, I believe in the organization. And we, we have to give the candidates who become the members or the cert holders, who become the SMEs and the leaders, like, we have to give them a lot of credit for how much they care in general, beyond how much will this do for my per hour earning, or whatever the case may be. Like, if you get to the point where you're trying to become a SME, like, you care more than just, let me get my piece of paper so I can move on. So I think being respectful of that, and encompassing, more than, okay, here's a free sweatshirt, a tumbler, some credit, a coupon for our store, maybe a free recertification or a free, exam book or something like that. Like, right, we know that the human psyche is a little bit deeper than, one-to-one rewards in a lot of these situations, especially with the amount of time and blood and sweat and tears that go into getting to the point where you are a SME for your industry. So we have seen a ton of different incentives for SMEs across all of our different partners. I think that some SME communities, they lean more into badging and, having that prestige of, I'm an official insert organization, subject matter expert. It's on my LinkedIn. It's on everything that I do. I carry the pride that comes with that. And people know that I'm a bad, you know what, when it comes to this craft, because this is tough to get, right? But then also, you know, the people who are on maybe the younger side of their career, they need that little nudge to break from manager to director, or they need that little something to just put them in consideration to just decide, do I really want to go for that next degree program? Do I really want to go for that higher level, whatever, right? Maybe just being in those rooms is what, you know, gives you that little bit of motivation. I think the organizations are usually cognizant of that as well.
No, I could not agree more. And to your point, I think looking at different, looking at different types of recognition based upon one's career is also really critical. To your point, I mean, something as simple as here's how to display this on your LinkedIn, and giving them the cheat code, right? As an ease of use goes a long way. On the other hand, I serve on a board where individuals, because they've entered more of the influencing side of their career. Back to some of the points that you brought up, not only is there some incentives with regard to their own research, but also they can sponsor people to get certification. And again, that's a great way to recognize individuals and enable them to influence when they're at that stage. So to your point, that it all goes back to knowing your base and, having that multiple angles, if you will, on how to recognize individuals based upon where they're at in their journey.
Yeah.
Well, we've also talked around this a couple times, but I think this is probably the $1 million question. What are some of those ways that programs can balance SME commitments and really enable them to provide meaningful contributions, while also recognizing the hectic nature of today's workforce and that aspect? Just curious again to hear your view from groups that you're working with on those fronts.
Sure. And I mean, today we work with just under 50 organizations. And I can tell you that I love every single one of them dearly. They're my babies. And even the ones that used to be part of the family, I love you and you're always welcome to come home. But I think that that answer is different for everybody. And it's so different that it's kind of tough to say whose is best, because there are a ton of really effective ways that we've seen SMEs be utilized in a way that is mutually beneficial. I think a lot of times programs can run into an issue where they feel like they're the ones, trying and giving all the effort, or the SMEs feel like they're not supported and they're just being asked to be full-time employees when I'm here as a favor, And I think that the number one way that everybody helps their SMEs make those meaningful contributions and feel respected is by making the process as easy as you can for the SME. Make it as easy as possible. Make the opportunities available to them so they don't have to hunt and ask and go on a scavenger hunt and be Indiana Jones to figure out when the next standard setting is. Put it out there. Now, there's also some of those considerations. We don't want all of that out there. Maybe we don't necessarily, that's a need to know situation. It's like, if that's the case, then you can't complain about, people not being, so we have to make it easy for the SMEs, however they get into the pool, make it easy for them. Do you have people who are super averse to filling out forms and doing their homework and stuff? Do they show up to meetings, but then that's all you can get out of them? Figure out how they behave and adjust, right? Figure out what is the best way to meet them on their level. And it always makes me laugh when you think of back in the 90s. Anytime like a teacher would like a TV show or something, when they would try to like get across to the bad kids, they would turn the chair around and sit on it like this. And it's like, you kind of have to do that to a degree with your SMEs and figure out, how do you not like patronize them, but maybe how do you elegantly placate to them and figure out a way to, make them feel like they're the star of the show. Because what you have to remember at all times is as long as we are all subscribing to this approach to test development, then the SMEs are the star of the show for a big portion of that process. And those dozens of millions of dollars that your content is worth goes through them. Mm-hmm. So they should be, far as I can tell it, they should be more valuable than a couple of spreadsheets that are cobbled together in somebody's brain somewhere who cannot have a coconut fall on their head when they're on vacation, or else you're cooked. That's what we have to protect against. So if we're making it easy for our SMEs, if we have a wide database of points about our people that makes it easy for us to say, this is how many people we have who are good at this, who are from this place, who are in this time zone, who are whatever, we can get super granular and figure out exactly who we want. And we can come back after the fact and show our work and say, what went well, what didn't, and figure it out from there.
And to your point too, I think also, you're mentioning kind of easing that process. I also think it's, looking at those elements of opportunities, right? Volunteering comes in a lot of different shapes and forms, and scaling those to different audiences is another way I've seen groups be really effective at leveraging. Not everybody has 2 or 3 days to give up at a time, but they may have an hour here or there.
That's right. And just to add to that really quickly, I know we got to get out of here. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to meet people where they are. I'm old school in a lot of ways, even though I'm relatively young. Like I still got a couple of years to 40. Still got a couple of years, guys. But I think that there's a moment where this could be an email, right? Where this could just be just send them a one-pager and they'll get everything they need. But there are times where you do need everybody present. You do need everybody locked in. And if that can only be 20 or 30 minutes, understand that.
Well, I think that what a great way to wrap us up there, Des. And you hit the nail on the head. Hopefully this acts as a good reminder of a couple great principles for those who are working within credentialing organizations, and as well as those who look to give back to their own field. So thank you very much for your time today, for your thoughts, and absolutely your passion as well for everything that we're doing with subject matter experts in our various disciplines. And to our listeners here this week, thank you so much for being with us, for taking the time to engage with us. We'll look forward to touching base again in a couple weeks with a new episode. In the meantime, be safe and be well. Thank you.